Hi there, I'm Brooke Dibley from Simply Speaking SLT, and welcome to my tutorial for my open-ended editable book companion for any book. So whether or not you choose to print this and use it, whether you want to use it on your iPad or whether you're going to use it in teletherapy, we all need to start in Adobe Acrobat Reader to add story information for the books that we want to create book companions for. You can use this document to create an unlimited amount of book companions simply by adding each book's information into the first 3 pages of this document, autofilling the document and making sure you save it as a new file. So what we need to do first is orient ourselves to this document. So I have this open in Adobe Acrobat Reader, like I said before, and Adobe Acrobat Reader is free on Mac and Windows to use this way, so please do make sure you're using Adobe Acrobat Reader. And it will look like this, or you may have some other boxes showing up. If you would like your document to look like mine, where it's a bit cleaner, especially if you're doing teletherapy, you may want to do this. All you need to do is go up to Edit, go to Preferences, and then where it says Forms, make sure that your settings look like mine, that this is unticked and these are unticked. And it'll just make all the form fields clean and not show up so that this document appears more to be like an app. Okay, and so on the first page you're going to notice the symbol here and this blank space here. We'll come back up to here in a moment, but first let's orient ourselves to these buttons over here. If we hit this, we'll go to our terms of use area. Please note that this document is under copyright. You have bought a license for one user unless otherwise stated on your purchase order. So please do be sure to not share this with other people. If other people would like a copy, please send them to the listing in my store where they can get their own. The tutorials are under this button, and you can click here for using on a computer, here for using it on an iPad, and if you are using my no print version, which will go over, sorry, my printable version, which we'll look at here, the printable version looks the same on the front page because the assumption is you're not going to print this front page. And if we go here, the tutorial just looks like this for those of you who will be printing your activity here. So the printable looks very black and white. The no print version, as we're looking at here, is still quite black and white, but does have a lot more use of black and some color throughout the document. Okay, so first what we need to do is add our story information. So because we're making a new companion here, we need to save it under our new story name. So we're going to go File, Save As, and then you're going to choose to name it. So I've put this in the Pig the Pug folder because that's what I am going to, which book I'm going to do for this tutorial. But go ahead and save this in a new place under the new name of your book so that you'll always be able to find the companion that relates to the story you're doing and still have the original blank copy. If you do accidentally copy over this with book information without keeping a blank copy, go ahead and re-download this from Teachers Pay Teachers. Okay, so as you can see, we insert images into this document as well as words. That's what the icon here represents, is adding images. And so before I went in to edit this book companion, I've taken photos from the story. So as you can see here, we'll look at this one. So I took photos of the story pages of the items I want my students to describe. I've taken a photo of 10 because this document allows up to 10, but if you only have 5 or 6, that doesn't matter. And then I've taken photos of what the 6 steps I believe represent the sequence of the story. But then as you can see, I've also done this for this story, and these are all screenshots from this story here, which I have been reading on Epic. So this is an ebook that I read with my students on my iPad or in teletherapy on the computer, and all I did was I found the pages in the book and then I used my screen clipping program that comes with my computer or any kind of screenshot software that you have on your computer to screenshot the parts of the book that I think best represent what I want. So I've got my items that I want my students to describe down here and my sequence of the story up here. So you need to take 6 pictures of the sequence of the story from the book, and you need to take up to 10 pictures of items from the story that you believe best represent the sequence. And then you also need a picture of the cover. Okay, so if we type here, we can put in the name of the book. I like to use capitals for this part because it's better formatted. Pig the Pug. And then I can go and I can find the cover of this story. If I go to where I've saved it, and there we go. We've now got the front page looking like I need it to, so I know that this is for that book. And then if I go to add story info, you'll see Pig the Pug is already added as the story title, and the cover's already down here for the parts of the story. So that's awesome. Now on these next 3 pages is where you'll add relevant information from the story. Here you type in the sequence of the story. Now if there are less than 6 sequences in the story, 6 main events, and you only would fill in up to 4 or 3, as many as you can, just leave blank what doesn't count. And then same with your images. This is where you will insert your images. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the key parts of the story and then bring you back to show you how I'm going to put in these images. Okay, so I've added in the key parts of the story here. Now, as you can see down the bottom for this page, it says this info is used for sequencing and story retell activities. So now that I've put in this information here in order, let's see what happens. If I go home, I go to the menu button and I choose sequencing, and I'm going to choose words, because we've typed in words, 6 parts words. Here you can see they're all out of order. And then our students will type a number up here, 1, 2, or 3, to put the story back in order. So let's go back home and add in more information. Now, let's add in the images. So this is for our students that may not be able to sequence written information. It may be too complex for them, and it's better for them to sequence some visual information. So I'm going to go here, click, and then go browse, and choose what I believe best represents the first part of the story. I've just taken photos of the pages. So I've taken photos of the pages and then sent them to myself on Gmail using my Gmail internet account, email account, sorry. Now, to ensure that all your images are going to be around the right way, like they are here, you need to make sure that they are wider than they are high, so that they're a portrait kind of, no, landscape kind of image. So how I do that is just turn your phone sideways as you would to take a normal photo. And then you can always crop it if you want to crop in on something, but that will always mean that it's wider than it is high. It will automatically orient that way, so that if you do have square images, it's going to flip them over. So just to be aware of that. So this image here is kind of perfect because this image here is very long. However, these I wanted to zoom in a bit more, so they are still a little bit wider than they are high, but they're close to square. Okay, so now we've done this first page. Let's have a look now. If we go to the menu and we go sequencing, pictures, 6 parts. And there they are, all of our pictures. They're not in the right order, but if you were printing this, you could cut these cards out if you wanted your students to physically sequence them. Most of my students just write up the top the numbers in these little areas here if we are printing it. But there we go, that's how that works. And then for the story retell area, if we go to the menu and then we go story retell with pictures, they're all going to be in the correct order. So these are all in the correct order of the story, and this will help your students to retell the story if they need pictures to help them. However, as you can see from the other options here, you can also retell through drawing, and then you can use your annotation tools to draw, especially if you're on an iPad, or if you're doing printable, they can draw with markers. And then if we go back, retell through typing, your students can retell the story here, and these tick boxes can help them tick off whether they've included the beginning, the middle, the end, and all those kind of areas. Okay, so let's go back to add our story information. So we've done page 1. Page 2, our WH questions. So I'm not going to add these in here because I actually prefer to target blanks levels of questioning. So I've added these in here because I know a lot of you have IEP goals that are organized by this version of questions, and so if you type them in here, they will automatically show up throughout the document. And then I will add in my inference questions in just a moment, but I want to show you the blank stuff. So if we go home and then we go menu, blanks levels of questioning, here is some information about blanks levels of questioning. If you want more information, you can click here. It's a very evidence-based way of targeting questions. And then if we go to level 1, we've got all the different types of questions under level 1. And what I like to do is have this open or printed while I'm reading the story with the child, and we can always ask these questions during the story or use the story afterwards to go back and answer these kind of questions. And there's an area here where you can type in their response, or if you just want to do the accuracy, you might put a 1 for accurate or a 0 for inaccurate. And then I've got all the levels in here, level 2, level 3, level 4 here. So level 3 is 2 pages and level 4 is 2 pages. So and then the WH questions, your questions will show up in these boxes, whatever you type up on that top page. So if you do want to look more at the blanks levels, do go ahead and look at that part of this document. Let's go to add story information. We'll go to the next page. So whatever you type in here will be showing up in those boxes. I'm going to go ahead and put in my inference questions and then come back to you. Okay, so I've added in my information, and now if I go home to the menu area and I go to inference and I hit go, here is our questions up here, and then our students can type the answers in here, or if you're printing they could write them in. Otherwise you could just ask the questions and note down whether or not they were accurate in these areas. Okay, and then we go back to add our story information, and in here we also can add some nouns in from the story that we would like our students to describe. So I'm going to go ahead and type them in here, and also add in the images that I've got from the book exactly the same way as we did for the sequencing, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've added in the images that I'd like my students to describe. That's for those that can't read or may just do better with describing what they can see. And then I've also got my words for those of them who can read and I want a little bit more of a complex activity for them. And then over here, we're going to insert our compare and contrast items. So we might have them compare and contrast these items we've already talked about above, or we may have them compare and contrast something from the story with something else. So you put them on top of each other. So if I want them to do compare a dog food bowl with a cereal bowl, then I will just type them on top of each other and they'll show up in the document. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those all in and then bring you back. Okay, now those are done. Let's have a look at what they look like across the document. So if I go home and then I go to the menu and we have a look at describing, and we first go pictures, we can see my items has been added in here, and I can hit the arrow and the next one will show up. And then if we go home again and then we go to describing and we go words, there is my words there that I typed in. Okay, so we'll also look at our compare and contrast. So we've got our dog food bowl with our cereal bowl, and if I click here we can type in some differences, and same in the middle and on the other side. So that's if you're using this no print. If you're doing the printable version, you'll print it off and your students can either just talk about how they're the same and different, or you can write on this sheet depending on how you choose to print them, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So now we're going to go back to the home area and add our story information area, and we've got the first page filled in and the second page filled in now, and finally we have the third page. So on this line here, we're going to insert vocabulary words that we would like our students to have to work through. Regular verbs in the present tense with ing on the end, we're going to put in here. Irregular verbs from the story. You might choose words that are related to the story if you can't find enough of them to fill in here, or you can just leave blank the areas which don't apply. For example, if you only have 7 to work on, then you just leave the last 3 blank. And then speech sounds. So with the speech sounds, what I do is I put in here originally the sound I'm most likely going to use the book for. So this book, Pig the Pug, I use G for the G sound, that G, back as a back sound, and I will pop in G words. But then if I want to use this with another student, I'll quickly come in and just change the 10 words here, or the student can do that with me. Let me show you what I mean. If we go menu and then we go to speech sounds, find and say area, we could instead just fill this in together as a student and we can find the words in the story that have our speech sounds in it and fill it in here, and as we fill it in here, it will fill in the other activities across the document. So I actually might leave that blank for today, and then my student and I can work together to find the words that have their sound in it, and I do often do that, and it makes it a bit more versatile, but that's because I use this in a no print way. If you're wanting to print this, you should add in the speech sounds here that you want to target for the story, and then save a new version with every new set of speech sounds you want to work on. Okay, so I'm going to go fill in this information and then I'll come back and explain this bottom area to you. I've now filled in the information from the story. I wasn't able to add one here, but I will fix that before I upload this into TPT, and you will be able to add one there. And we'll take a look at what's happened in the document. So if we go home, we go to the menu and we go to the vocabulary area, we will see that our word is up here and we can analyze the word down here. This is an evidence-based approach to learning new words. Is the definition, finding it in context, and then writing your own sentence. And then I've got other areas here which just help build our understanding of a word. And then if we look again, we've now got the verb tense area. If we go to the irregular area, it looks the same as this is the regular area and this is the irregular area. We've got our present tense verbs. Oh, that's meant to be making. And it doesn't matter if I change it here or anywhere in the document, it will automatically update in all the other areas where we use this word. So we write over here past tense and over here future tense. And I've purposely used different things like last week, last month, yesterday, last year, because studies have shown that kids learn better when we don't just say yesterday, when we use a variety of time frames for past tense verbs. And when we type in here, it is blue for the before and green for the after. Okay. So now if we go back again, have a look what's happened for our making sentences. Oh, no, not that one, sorry. Speech sounds. So I have added in these words for today just to show you how these games fill in, but I often will just have my students do that themselves. And if we put here that the sound is G and that we're doing it in all areas, and then if we move down, what's happened is we now have this silly sentences activity all filled in with our words automatically. Automatically we have this game board and we've got the book here and the game is to put it back on the shelf. We've got our book here and we've got our bounce game and the instructions on how to play are here. Please note you will need a dice to play these games if you're doing teletherapy. I have a free teletherapy dice in my store which I will link down below this video. And we've got tic-tac-toe again, our book's in the middle, and our words have automatically been added on the tic-tac-toe boards. If you are doing teletherapy, I will explain later how you play these games. And then we've got my terms of use. So now, if we go back to this activity here, home, we look back here at our third page. Okay, so you only fill in this table with people and characters, verbs, adjectives, and nouns from the book if you don't want your students to do it themselves in this activity here, the making sentences activity. I will often have my students do this with me, so we fill in the people and the characters in the story, and if there aren't 6 characters in the story, we think of some sort of related people. For example, we might have Pug's owner and talk about what his name would be. If there was another dog, what their name would be. And then the verbs in the story, which again you've already talked about maybe if you're doing the verbs activity with your student. Adjectives from the story or related to the story. Same with objects and nouns. So I find related vocabulary if they're not enough in the story. Then we roll a dice. Again, if you're doing teletherapy, you'll use my teletherapy dice to create new sentences. And in no print, these text boxes are all editable. And in printable, you will just write them on there. This also works on the iPad, obviously, as well. So when we fill these in here, they will also automatically fill in on these top pages. And the same goes the other way around if you want to fill them in yourself, and then your students make their sentences. So if you're only working on subject-verb sentences, you'll just leave adjectives and nouns for that student, and you'll just fill in what's appropriate for them, then roll the dice and create your new sentences using the object and the verb that you have rolled. And that is how you fill in your information for the story. So now that you've added in all of your information into this document, we need to get this onto your iPad so you can use it on your iPad. So what I do is I've saved this to my computer as a PDF iPad, I will open this document up, and then I will bring up my iPad now on screen recording so that I can show you how to download it, save it to an app, which will then allow you to open it in the app we'll use this in. So let's move on to that step. Okay, so here I am on my iPad. I am in the Gmail app because I've sent this to myself on Gmail. You might get this onto your iPad in a different way, using another cloud service or emailing it to yourself, or any other way you choose to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on the PDF file, and then it will open up like this. And then I'm going to click this blue button here so that it will open up in my Google Drive. And it will look like this. Now, what I need to do now is I need to open this up in the app File Explorer. So I'm going to put on the screen now what File Explorer looks like. It's a great app for storing all of your files, your digital products and digital resources that you use in therapy, all on your iPad to use when you need them. And I have a blog post about how to use that, and I'll put that in the description of this video. So if we hit those three dots up here, the ones I hit for this menu to come up, and then I'm going to hit open in, and when I hit open in, these options come up, and I'm going to scroll along until I find File Explorer. So this is it here, and I'm going to hit copy to File Explorer on my iPad, and then it'll give me a chance to save this somewhere. So I'm going to save this on my iPad, so I hit local, then I'm going to hit SLP, and I'm going to hit Book Companions. These are all folders I have set up within this app. You can set them up yourself as well. Oh, it already exists because I've already done this for my own therapy. I've been using this app, this companion in therapy, so I'm just going to hit skip, but you won't have this come up. It will then save wherever you've chosen to save it. Now what I want to do when I'm in therapy and I want to use this, I'm going to open the File Explorer app. So let me just go back to my home page. So I have the File Explorer app saved down here. I'm going to hit the File Explorer app, hit cancel, because I do not need the Pro version ever to use this in all the capacity I recommend to you to use it. The only reason you would ever need the Pro version is if you want to link up your other cloud services. And I'm going to go to SLP, where I know I've saved it, and Book Companions, where I know I've saved it. And I'm going to go and find the Pig the Pug one, which is down here. That's why it's important that you name them well, and which is here. Otherwise they all look the same, because unfortunately this app's not able to process that picture on the front page. And I'm going to hit these three dots here, and then I'm going to hit share. You might have open in on your version, or somewhere where it's going to allow you to open it in another app. So scroll along, and I'm going to choose Books, Apple Books. Okay, yours might be called iBooks depending on the version you're using. And there's my old version. Just while it's loading, it shows me the last thing I had open, and there is the new version. So let me show you what my library is looking like. If I close this, you can see here that I've got some of the other versions of this that I've made here in my Apple Books when I open it. So I'm going to go ahead and open Pig the Pug, and if we hit the menu button, we're able to come to the main menu, and we can work our way through activities. We'll quickly cover the activities soon, but for those of you who are quite tech savvy, you're probably not going to need to stick around for the next few bits, but I do just want to point something out, so don't go away yet. Of course, once you start filling in these worksheets, essentially, they're going to be annotated on, and so your students that come to do this again the next time with another student, it will all be filled up. So I just want to show you what you can do. If I hit up the top where the title is, then we'll bring up this menu, and then I hit this arrow, we'll go back to my library. So I'm in my library now. As you can see, I've opened this twice. There's two different versions, just from another tutorial I was filming. And now if I hit these three dots here, and I go remove, it will delete it from, and then I hit the red delete, it will delete it from my iBooks. And then I'll do that again with this one, and I'm going to go remove, and I'm going to hit delete. Now what this does is it clears it from iBooks, but it's not gone from File Explorer. Okay, this is why we save it to File Explorer, so that then when we want to open up a clean version, we can just go ahead and do it all again. Hit the Pig the Pug, the three dot, hit share. So this takes just seconds, and so before each session, I just open up the Book Companion again to work on with my next student. Okay, so if you're quite tech savvy, you might be able to work out how to play these activities moving forward. However, feel free to stick around because I'm now going to show you how to play each of the, or fill in the worksheets or play the games included in this packet here. So in this companion, I mean. So if I go home, and you'll just realize that we've got the big menu button. That's where mainly you're going to work, because your story info is under this button here, but you've added that in Adobe. You can change it now, but it is best to do that all in Adobe because it's formatted better. So I'm going to go to menu, and we're going to have a look first at the sequencing activities. So if we click up the top again, and I go like, we can see all the pages in this document. So as you can see, we've got the different levels of sequencing complexity. So if you only want your students to have to sequence 3 activities, which one happened first, then which happened, then which happened, you choose this one. If you want them to sequence written information, you would choose these ones here. And if you want them to type out the sequencing, you'd choose these ones here, which is the next level of complexity, where they have to type out what happened at the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened at the end, or whether there's 6 parts here. So that's all represented on that front menu page of sequencing. So if I hit that, we can see that all represented there, that we have the different levels. Now you'll notice these symbols here. These symbols are across the document, and they mainly represent the main skill your students have to be able to work on that particular page. So if it's an image, they have to be able to recognize images. If it's this one, it's that they have to be able to read, and for this, or at least have you read it to them and them understand. And for this one, it's typing, the capacity to type. So if, for example, if I choose this one here, you'll see that down in the bottom right hand corner we have this little symbol here, just to help you as you work your way through this document. So I'm going to go back home and then go to the menu. The story retell works very similar. They can either retell with pictures, which we've looked at already, and then, but this time they're in the right order, and they can just use this to help them. And if you do want to type under there, you can type under each one, maybe give a little sentence about what's happening if that's something you want to include in your therapy. And then the next one is story retell through drawing. So if you hit the title of this page, retell the story, it'll bring up a menu, and you can choose here to choose markup, and then your students can draw a picture using these here, and then you just click it again to make them go away. You hit it again. All right, so I've activated the find. Okay, and then these boxes here, they're tickable, just so you know. So they can have your students help you, that can help your students to make sure they've included all the aspects of a story retell. And then the next one, so these arrows here help you move through to the next level if you don't want to work from the menu, is retell through typing. So if your students are going to retell the story by typing the main idea, you can click inside this box and they will be able to type. Now, as you've noticed, the keyboard comes up. So what I often do is actually use a Bluetooth keyboard with this. Do be aware, however, unfortunately, a limitation of iBooks is that when you hit the space bar, it progresses to the next page. So your students will have to hit Alt and the space bar for a space when typing. If your students just find this too frustrating, instead you could open this in Notes Writer, which is another app that reads PDFs really nicely. The presentation isn't as clean and pretty, but it is even more functional because you'll be able to use a keyboard and use that spacebar. Okay, so I'm going to go and we'll look at the next activities. So the next activity is story elements. Again, by typing here, and on this page you could have your students draw what happens if typing is not something that they're very strong in. And then we've got blanks levels of questioning, which I'll leave for you to look at a little bit more. There's some information there. Great evidence-based way of targeting questions. I like to just either print these off or have this up on my iPad while I read a physical book with a student to remember what level we're working on. So level 1 is 1 page, level 2 is 1 page, level 3 is 2 pages, and level 4 is 2 pages. And then and here you can add in your own questions in this third row. And one thing you might want to do is just note down here whether they're getting them right or wrong. You might put a 1 every time they're right and a 0 every time they're wrong in the little text boxes down there, or have your students write in their answer if that's something that works with your format of therapy. Okay, and then WH questions, pretty self-explanatory, and the page setup is exactly the same as the blanks questions. And then inference is the same, so I'm not going to go into that page. Describing, I just want to point out that you can either choose for words or pictures, and these are tick boxes, so your students can tick off. Have they talked about what it looks like, the size of it, the color, the shape, those kind of things, and they can tick off those tick boxes. And then same goes for if they're doing it for pictures. Oops, sorry. If they're doing it for pictures, do be aware these text boxes are still writable. You're still able to write in there. So if you change it here, it'll change across the document. So try not to have your students type in there, but they can tick off these tick boxes just by touching the square. Okay, and then we'll go back to the menu and we'll look at compare and contrast. So the way that compare and contrast works, if you tick on the, you tap your mouse on the left hand, not your mouse, sorry, your finger, on the left hand side of the screen, it'll bring up a text box where you can type in stuff for the item on the left, same on the right, it's just a basic Venn diagram. And then if you tap in the middle, you can write in the middle as well. Okay, and then, and again, those compare and contrast words are from what you put in on the front page on Adobe. And then vocabulary, it is set up like this, where you simply write in these text boxes. So we've got synonyms, antonyms, definition. We often get our definition from Google or somewhere and pop that in there, or come up with our own. How it's used in the story, to give some good context for this word related to the story. Associations that we might relate to this word. Using it in a sentence ourselves, and then either drawing a picture, or if you're using Notes Writer, inserting your own image from your camera roll. Another option for that picture area is it's actually also a text box, so you could use an emoji. I had a student notice that yesterday, so they chose to put an emoji in there that they thought best represented the word, and then they used markup to annotate on top of it. However, the emoji itself may suffice. Okay, and then the verb tense, we can do regular or irregular. They look exactly the same, it's just the words are different, and you simply would say help them with this, complete the saying, the phrase, sorry. Today I am telling, next week I will tell, last week I told. And when you type in there, it's green on this side just to show you I'll write hello, and on this other side it's blue, just to kind of color coordinate our verb tense there. And same for the regular verbs. So now if we go to the menu, we can look at our making sentences activity. Now the making sentences activity, I've talked about this in the beginning of this video, that you can either fill this in yourself or have your students fill it in. Each of these are text boxes, and they can fill in the people from the story, the verbs, the adjectives, and the nouns, and then roll a dice. So of course you'll need a real dice. For this game companion to work in all its entirety, you're going to need counters and a dice. We'll look at the counters reasoning soon, but the dice, you roll a dice, and the dice will tell you, your first dice roll will be which character you're going to make your sentence about, second will be verb, third adjective, fourth noun, and then of course if your story doesn't have 6 characters in it, just you can make up some other characters, use your imagination related to the story. Okay, and then the next area, the last area we're going to look at, is the speech sounds. So this is where you're going to need counters soon for the board game and the bounce game, but let's quickly have a look. So if we go to find and say, this is where I might have my students find all the words in the story that have their speech sound in it, and then we type it in here, and as we type it in here, it'll fill in across the document, or you can just have them just do that yourself on an Adobe Acrobat Reader. And I like to identify where in the word they're looking for their word, where in the word they're looking for it in the book, and their speech sound here, just to help them orientate to that. And then these are tick boxes down here if we want to have them say it 10 times and simply work on a drill based level. Okay, so as they find a word, they put it in this little table and tick them off. Often that interactive aspect of this is very fun for them. Then on the next page, we have a make a silly sentences. So I like to eat blank for dinner, and then they can choose something funny from, here's their word list. Again, their word bank was automatically filled in from what we put on the front page, and they can type in their word and make some silly sentences. Great for sentence level. Then we have a basic board game where you're working from the start and you're trying to put the book back on the shelf, and you just need counters and a dice. Put your iPad flat on the table and then use your counters like you would on a normal board game, and accept your iPad's the board and roll the dice to move through the game. And then same goes for the bounce game. So the instructions are here, and this here is a text box, so you can agree together how many points you need to get to win, and you work your way around the board either clockwise or anti-clockwise, and the first person to get a certain amount of points wins. So as you jump over the books. And then tic-tac-toe. So again, I'm gonna hit that tic-tac-toe heading, and it will bring up a menu, and I'm going to choose the markup option, and then we can play tic-tac-toe. And as we do our word, we have to, as we add a X or an O into a place, we need to say the word 10 times. So that's another articulation activity. And then to clear it, I'm just going to use my eraser here. Okay, so that is how you play or fill in and interact with all of the parts of this document. My terms of use are on the next page there. And if you have any questions, you can click one of these buttons here and it will help you to be able to communicate with me, because it will take you to those pages. Okay, I hope that was helpful, guys. Have fun and reach out if you have any questions.